So I honestly did not expect us to have this many clients at this point. And, I didn't expect us, this is going to sound kind of negative, but I honestly didn't know if we were going to work this well together.
We're not done in 5 or 10 years. I think we're doing something wrong and we'll just go back to our 9 to 5. I want to see us in like 5 years be financially free. Like,
you can have someone surpass you, but you would still feel good about that.
Oh, that's another cool thing about this journey is meeting people along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially the younger entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Mercedes.
I'm not gonna lie, the first time you told me that you were listening to Andrew Tate, I was like, why? Like, why would you do that? But now that I have actually gone and...
If you just imagine doing what we do every day at that level,
yeah,
like it's almost impossible to not achieve what we're trying to achieve. And I think if we just keep that discipline. To 14 different countries, and I am an ex-NASA engineer.
And I am a former marketer.
What's up?
Hey.
Where are we today?
We're in Cape Town, South Africa.
Cape Town, South Africa. It's been a year, almost a year. I looked at my podcast and it was January 30th, 2023.
Wow.
So we're 3 days from 1 year.
Wow, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. We weren't even recording at that point too. It was just me and you with like the microphone in between us.
Yeah. Or was it even a microphone? I think it was just my phone.
It could be actually. It probably was before the Blue Yeti.
Yeah. Well, here we are, Cape Town, with Chris and Paulo. We'll probably have them on. We have this pretty convenient setup right now.
Yeah, it's very nice.
But yeah, welcome. What do you want to call this?
Founders Forum.
Founders Forum.
The Founders Forum. We were thinking doing Founders Talk, but I agree. I think the FF sounds good.
Founders Forum. Oh, two syllables, FF.
Yeah, and I think it'll be cool because we get to talk to, we are both technically founders now. Mm-hmm. A lot has changed since our last podcast together. I don't know why I'm looking at the camera. I don't need to. But I think it'll be cool to hear this back in relation to our last podcast because I think a lot has changed in the last year. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that first, actually?
Yeah, I think...
How much has changed?
Well, where were you last year? So you had your job?
Yes.
I had a job.
Yeah.
What were you doing? Was I just like, I just started my podcast, just trying to figure it out? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were in a completely different world and different mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. We were, excited about, I think, our new jobs at the time and excited about, travel, but I don't think we had entered even thinking about this new phase of our lives. So, we were babies, in other words.
I think something I really appreciated over the past year is how much we've grown into like habits.
Yes.
And I think when we started this journey, we used to watch Iman's course.
Yes.
And like 80% of the course was like not about business, but it's about like mindset and habits. And I was like, what the heck's going on? But it makes a lot of sense now, I think. I think it's a kind of foundation. How do you feel about like what you've done so far and like the lifestyle change in terms of like a routine or not a routine or like how you go your day to day now versus when you're in school or at Second Front?
That's a great question. I think it's a lot more healthy and balanced now, honestly. I think the sense of discipline in my life came from external sources a lot of the time, like my parents or school teachers or coaches. And I feel like for the first time, it's coming from an internal source of like, okay, I need to wake up, I need to do habits, I need to work out, I need to eat healthy. So I think that's been a huge shift for me.
And that internal source in the relationship, Gregory.
Kind of, yeah. You definitely are a motivator. And, this is actually something that I had written down for later in the conversation, but I think we can talk about it now because it's relevant. But I really look up to you for this kind of guidance and discipline and habits. And I would love to know, like, where did it come from for you? Like, where did you get your discipline from?
Well, first of all, I want to reciprocate. I was actually journaling about this today or yesterday, how, like, I think we're a great compliment. Yeah. And, like, there's a lot of things I've learned from you, like, to be more caring. And I think things you get from me, I get a lot of other stuff from you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, so I missed it. What's the...
Where did you get your discipline from?
I can't really pinpoint a place in time, I guess. Growing up, I've always been, like, clean and try to get my things done. I think the idea of, like, just... I think it's competition, and I just want to like be the best as best as possible.
Yeah.
And then that drives kind of like, okay, well, I think I need to do these things to be able to achieve that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's pretty impressive, actually, because I think most people have to go through a certain level of hardship in their life, or maybe internal struggle. But, you know, we've talked very openly about your life growing up, and you've said that you've gone through hardship, but you say for the most part you've had a pretty like blessed life.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's even more impressive to me that you're able to find this deep internal discipline without having the world, you know, forcing you into that.
Yeah, I think that's important for us too, because I mean, we all have hardships growing up, but relative to the other entrepreneurs that we follow, I'm like, man, they really went through the trenches.
Yeah.
And I think when people go through the trenches, that motivates them more getting out. And I think that's why we need the extra discipline, because I think we had a relatively decent upbringing. Like it wasn't like we were like, I mean, we didn't have, my family didn't have as much money, but it's not like we were starving or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, I don't know, I find a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction just being disciplined and pride. I told you the other day, like, other than maybe like some of my cousins, I think I'm one of the most disciplined people I know.
Yes.
And we were watching that Cody video the other day, and she brought up that I think it's like more important to have discipline than it is to have motivation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, I love that. I think that has been really powerful for, I think, both of us in this journey as well. So to kind of fill in people, if this is their first time listening, what are we doing right now? Can you explain like the journey that we're on a little bit?
We're recording a podcast in Cape Town.
Yeah, besides that.
Oh, yeah. Feel like I'm getting interviewed. Yeah, so what is it? Operation YOLO Part 2, I guess.
Yeah.
But long story short, last April-ish, you got laid off.
Yes, I did.
We started a company, and I was kind of, you were like going full time, and I was kind of like on the side. And then last summer, I was like, fuck it, let's just go all in. So I basically quit. And since then, we've been starting like this entrepreneur journey.
Yeah.
We have videos about what went well along the way, what didn't. And I'd say like primarily we're just, I think our main grind is the online marketing agency.
Yes.
And then of course this YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So yeah. How would you, is that?
No, I think that's a fair assessment of the situation. I think it's been kind of a winding road to get to this point in a way. I think we've gone through a lot to decide what we're doing and to kind of settle in this place. I mean, for me personally, I had no idea what I was doing when I got into this, right? I'd never run a business before. I've never managed people before. And yeah, I think it was really interesting to have this shift from a 9-to-5 into something so self-guided, because I mean, you have this intrinsic kind of internal discipline, and you also have, you know, your career behind it, where like, you know, for me, it was like, wow, I'm getting dropped in here, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? But it's been really interesting.
I love the position you're in, because you're like learning a lot from a lot of great people. We had a team meeting this week, and I think one of our EA, she mentioned like, hey, like management this, management that, and she was referring to us.
Yes.
So how did you feel when she was saying management?
You know, it was a little bit, it was a mixed emotion, honestly. Part of me felt like a sense of pride, I guess, or fulfillment in a way, that like, wow, I'm actually at this point right now. I feel confident in that somebody is calling me this title. Granted, I feel like labels and titles, you know, can only cover so much, but it was new to me for sure. And I think in that way, it also made me a little uncomfortable because I've never seen myself as like management, you know what I mean? Especially not at this age, maybe when I was a little bit older, but I would say it was definitely interesting for me. How was it for you though? Because you have been called a manager officially before.
Felt awkward. And I think I remember working for, you know, Al Chen, and I'd always say like, oh, I work for him, and he always says, you work with me. And you know, that's the thing I feel too, like I don't really care to be management. In fact, I actually don't want to even be a manager.
I know.
I want to be as far away from the company as possible in a sense, because I want to focus on like strategy and growth and getting more companies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt a little awkward. And I also subscribe to the belief that Al taught me, where it's like, it doesn't matter what your title is. Like if there's work that needs to be done, just get it done.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if it's your job or their job, or if it's your title or their title, just get the work done.
Yeah, that's really good insight. I think you are a great leader in that way, and that you really support other people truly, as an equal, and not as like, you know, kind of like master subordinate kind of thing, which I think is very difficult to do. Kind of on the note too of us starting this business, because this is new for both of us. You know, have you ever, you know, come across the feeling of like, oh, maybe I should have done it like this, or maybe if I were to do it all over, I would do this instead? Have you ever felt that? And, you know, if so, what was something that came to mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I felt that yet. And I think I'm just I went into it feeling that I didn't know what I was doing, and I was always open to trying new things. And I think I've done a great job doing that. And, you know, I think part of the journey is experiencing the journey and the failures and things that didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I think one of the big things I've been adapting to is, like not having such a closed mind, because I feel like I grew up closed-minded, you know, like learning physics and doing stuff a certain way. And so like people like you and the boys have really taught like, there's like other ways to do things. And I think that's one of the coolest things I've learned. And also like taking more risk. Like I think I grew up very conservative, whether it's money or just decision making.
Yeah.
And now I'm a little more, I think, bold and not as aggressive as I want to be, but I think I am a little more bold. Yeah. But that's a great question, great transition to what I wanted to ask you was, did you have any expectations going into the business? And if you did, how are those expectations meeting up or not meeting up today?
You know, it's funny you say that, because I think my expectations were kind of in the opposite direction from where I think we're moving. To be honest with you, when we started this, I had no idea if it would work for us personally. We've seen it work for other people, like the boys, like, you know, your other friends. But I had no idea if we were able to step into this new role and this new phase of our life and be able to be good at it.
Right.
So I honestly did not expect us to have this many clients at this point. And, you know, I didn't expect us, this is going to sound kind of negative, but I honestly didn't know if we were going to work this well together. I had, you know, some reservations at first about like, oh, he's way more experienced than I am with a lot of things. And I don't know how I'm going to bring my skill set to the table necessarily. So, yeah, I think the expectations were there. They're in a different direction though. And I feel like confidently I can say I'm glad to say that those expectations were incorrect, honestly. And that it actually happened and worked out in an entirely different way.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's been interesting. How do you feel about working together as a couple?
Yeah, I was actually going to follow up, and that question kind of goes with it too.
Yeah.
I had no doubt that we would be able to go through this journey together. I think I tell people it came in phases, right? Like we became a couple, and then I think the first level of learning is, I guess, living together maybe in a way, which we did for a few months. We're like, okay, this is working out.
Yeah.
And then I think the next level is like traveling together, which we did that whole 5-month, 14 country thing. And that worked out fine. And then the next level is like personal finances. So we were exposed to each other's finances, and then just kind of working together in general. Like, so those three plus how we get along, I was like, let's try out business. Yeah. And in fact, I think business has helped us grow even more as a couple.
Absolutely.
Specifically with things like how we operate and how we communicate.
Yes.
It's actually quite fascinating. And I think the more we're into this, the more and more I really admire and appreciate Layla and Alex Ramosi.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it's crazy just to think about what they've done, and they could not have gone this far without each other, I don't think. Yeah. And it's cool to see the growth. And I can relate to a lot of things they say, whether it's about the business or each other in the relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I think I, in a way, since you've introduced me to them, kind of like look up to them in a way on how they run their businesses, how they have their relationship with each other. And I think that, you know, setting the right expectation and being able to communicate, that has been like, I think, our key too in this relationship and in our business partnership too.
I think that's rare from what I've seen, or maybe I don't know enough about other people's relationships, but you know, every Saturday we do, for the business, we have our masterminds where we talk about things that went well, things that didn't go well, are we in the right direction? And we take that same structure and do that periodically for a relationship. Not as often, not every once a week, but I think being able to do that periodically really helps the relationship too.
Yeah, no, that I agree. And, you know, I think that's something that's difficult for most couples to do, because it's hard to have kind of some of these hard conversations, you know, about money, about business direction, about management, about our lifestyle, that kind of thing. But I feel very grateful, you know, that we can do that.
I will say I was watching a Layla video yesterday or the day before, and I thought how proud and excited I am for you, because I think Layla's like almost like in her late 20s. Yeah. But in her stories, you know, she started when she was like your age. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I think compared to where Layla was back then, you're way ahead of her. But so if we can just achieve at least a fraction of their success, that's going to be awesome. Yeah. What does
that success look like to you?
Well, definitely, I want, my goal for us is to like retire you before you're 25. Again, setting the goals aggressively, and definitely be out of here within 10 years. Like 10 years, if we're not done in 5 or 10 years, I think we're doing something wrong, and we'll just go back to our 9-to-5s. And you know, and I think I have a strategy of like how we can even 9-to-5 get to closure. But yeah, I think in the beginning of this journey, Iman was like, oh, write this little Wikipedia page about yourself. Yeah. So things that I like to do, I want to see us in like 5 years be financially free, like go where we want, eat where we want with no issue. And then like 10 years from now, like have several businesses. And then in the 15-20 year time frame, you know, maybe have a family and also philanthropy. But I think something we've reflected on in the past few days is, again, we've never been there, but you know, all these very successful people have claimed like once you get to a certain point of like success and money, it's all kind of the same. Yeah. So I've been really trying to internalize enjoying the journey. Yeah. So, but yeah, how about you? Where do you want to be in? Let's see, since it's been what, year 1. So where do you want to be by year 5? No, let's go year 2, year 5, and year 10.
By 2, 5.
So we're in 10. Year 1. We're like almost done with year 1.
I think by year 2, I would like this first company, to be somewhat free of our operations.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I think it's not going to be at the point where we can sell, but I think it'll be at the point where we've got a stronger product, we've got a stronger team, systems, and we can start to step back from the company. I think in 5 years, I hope we're not still with this current company in a way. Yeah. I hope we are advancing into either a different industry, something that, you know, is more scalable and has kind of more seamless leverage. I think in 10 years, I would hope that, you know, I hope we are, like you said, I hope we are done in some capacity, at least financially. I truly believe, I do not think either of us will ever be like not working in some capacity. I think both of us need that for our own personal fulfillment. But yeah, monetarily, I hope that we are good. And I hope that, you know, our next focus can be something that's more internalized, like either like a new business project, a venture, a family, you know, something of that nature, to keep us focused.
I think one thing I'm excited for in the next 1 to 5 years, it's kind of a combination of being in the hustle and retired, is like building our own house. Yeah. So in Vegas, there's like the new developments now, which are like cookie cutters. But we've been to maybe like 20 to 40 Airbnbs. And I think it's cool that we see things that inspire us, like this like glass door that's all the way to the ceiling. And so I think hopefully by next year, we can start building our dream home, or not even a dream home, like our next home. Yeah. And I really want to incorporate a lot of things we've seen to help with like ergonomics and just functionality. So I think that'll be a fun, like in the middle of the journey aspiration. Yeah.
I would love to have you talk a little bit more about the water room too.
Oh, the water room, yeah. So I don't know, part of the self-development thing is like, oh, do cold plunges and everything. And really when we visited Thomas, like in August? Has it been August?
Yeah,
oh,
it's August. Okay. I know, crazy,
so
right?
Thomas had this super sick setup where he has a pool out. First of all, he has a sick house.
Yeah, that's true.
And then in the back there's a pool, and then he just like built his own sauna in the back, and next to the sauna he has a hot tub.
Yeah.
And then at the time he had a little like cold plunge thing, but I'm sure he'll upgrade that. But I think something I really would like day to day is like a room or an area of the house or in the backyard or whatever, where it's like a water room.
Yeah.
Water room, because I would want like not necessarily a full size pool because I feel like that's more maintenance.
Yeah.
But like I hate running, but I think cardio is great. And the thing I hate about swimming is just the logistics of going in and out.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, let's have one of those. Is it called like a lap pool or jet pool?
Yeah, it's like a little like like a stationary pool.
Yeah. It's like the size of maybe like 2 to 3 humans, and like there's jets that you just swim in.
Yeah.
So I want one of those, and then a sauna.
Yes.
And then a hot tub and a shower.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of like in one place, so you don't have to like, walk and like change and get cold outside. And so I think that'll be really, really cool to set up if we can do that somehow.
Yeah, I think so, because, I think up until this point, life has really prepared us. I think the next steps will be like building a house, starting a family.
Right.
I think we're going to be like amazing at any of those things. And I would hope that we'd be,
we'll see,
just because, we've had this kind of foundation that we can build off of. So.
Well, I think something that we do well together is whether or not we know something's going to be successful, we kind of do a good job picking each other up.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, we're each other's accountability buddy. So like the past week, I've been kind of like sick / really tired, and you just kind of like, come on, it's gonna be great. And then vice versa, like when you need to pick me up, I'm like there.
Yeah.
So I think we do a great job of that and being more supportive than like, oh, why aren't you like this?
Yeah, definitely. So. Which leads me to ask, like, obviously this journey hasn't been, nothing but like roses and happiness and joy. What keeps you kind of going through some of the more difficult times? Like, what are you telling yourself? What do you do to get through that?
I don't know if it's kind of vain or the wrong motivator, but I just want to like be better than a lot of people that I know, but not like in an unhealthy way. Like, oh, I'm going to beat you. It's just like, I look up to you and I want to like get to your level and do better. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd be proud if someone below me surpassed me. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that when the Padawan becomes the master?
The master,
or something?
yeah.
So it's more of in that light. Like whenever I was I guess that's a good thing I never thought about. Like when I was at JPL or Blue Origin, when I saw like a younger engineer better than me, I'd be like, awesome. Like I wish I'm not like, oh man, you're taking over my job.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where I'm coming from, is like, I look up to people like, Thomas and Louis, and I'm like, I want to get to your level one day, if not further.
Yeah.
So I think that's what gets me going. It's not, unfortunately, it's not like any hardships in the past, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I think I've reached a relative level of success in the past 2 or 3 years from my previous career. So I don't really need that anymore.
That's very interesting. I think something that you brought up that I notice is different than a lot of other people is that you can have someone surpass you, but you would still feel good about that. I think it's interesting because I was listening to this book last night when we were making a puzzle.
What book?
It's called The Courage to be Disliked. And something that they talk about in that book is a competition versus a comrade. And basically competition is someone that you are solely competing against. You don't necessarily have that bond versus like a comrade, which in my mind, a comrade, like a good example is like Chris and Paulo.
Yes.
They are comrades, they are here to support the cause, support, you and you to them. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like, you talk about Chris and Paulo, you talk about Al Chen, you talk about Louis and Thomas, like, one, what are your views like on mentorship and where do you think people can start to find mentors?
Yeah, I think mentorship is crucial. And I love playing both sides, the mentor and the mentee. I think at our level too, something I forget to appreciate is like, I'm willing to pay for mentorship, whether it's in the form of money or other, favors or relationship building. So I think mentorship is really important because they can help you, guide you. They've done this already, so they kind of know all the shortcuts, and you're learning from their mistakes, and they can like really see things that you don't yet because you're so in the trenches. Yeah, and I also love being a mentor because I think the best way to learn is to teach. Like you don't really know something unless you can teach it. So that's what I think. But yeah, you're getting really good at that too. Like you're becoming a mentor in a way to me in a lot of ways, especially emotionally. But in this journey, I think there's a lot of ways you've grown. I don't know if you can pinpoint which one's your favorite, but which one's your favorite growth?
I think the thing that's been the most powerful for me is learning how to communicate more effectively. I think for my entire life, it's been something that I've struggled the most with, unconsciously or not. I think, meeting you was a very eye-opening experience in a lot of different ways. One of them being the way you communicate. I would say, in comparison to most of society, you're like a hyper communicator. You're very good about, discussing your feelings very openly, honestly, and without like the
filter.
Well, kind of without the bias of emotion in a way.
Yeah.
And I have never really met someone who could do it as well as you do. So I think that's really drastically improved my life in terms of like, I feel like I can think more critically. I feel like I could communicate more critically. Like I would say, the conversations that we were having at the beginning of this relationship versus now are very different because of that. You forced me to confront, in a way that I've never had to in the past. So I think that's been really eye-opening and a point of growth that I've been finding.
I think along those lines, something that you've helped me with communication is we've recently been watching The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny you said this, like it's so relatable, or not relatable, but you can understand where I come from.
Yeah, it's like,
and I can really see a lot of Sheldon in me.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah.
Like the Spock robot kind. But it's cool because like Amy, or even all of his friends, like they try to humanize him in a way, and I think you've done that for me, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think we bring different strengths to this relationship, and I think as part of my role, maybe being the woman in the relationship, maybe, I don't know, being your business partner, I think, that's my strength, and I hope that I can share that with you.
Thank you.
So,
what has been your favorite, I don't know, I want to ask like people and places, but who's your favorite person other than Chris and Paulo, because they're here?
It's true.
That you've met on our journey that you feel like has really kind of shaped our direction in this journey?
It's honestly the first person I thought of was the first person that you introduced me to, which was Queer Rainer.
Queer Rainer.
Yeah,
yes.
which is funny because he's someone that I think you, admire and is the reason why you're in the place you're at. And, I think in a way I don't think we've been like one-on-one mentoring like between me and him, but I think the way he thinks and the way he moves has been very different to me because I've never really met someone like Queer Rainer before who has just like so many ideas and, is very good at communicating those ideas. And I think when you brought, your family, but especially him into my life, I was like, wow, like I didn't even know there was this whole other realm of like possibility in a way.
Right.
Because I think we've seen that realm with some of your other friends like Louie and Thomas. But I think it's Queer Rainer who keeps my mind open,
right.
I guess, to that possibility.
Yeah. Queer Rainer is definitely a savant in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. So I would definitely
say Queer Rainer.
Say Queer Rainer. I mean, is there a single, you have so many influential people in your life, but it's probably hard to say like, who's the most influential though out of those? And this could be someone that you know personally or not. I'm
glad you actually said that because it wasn't like I could name off Louis, Thomas, Chris, Paulo, and Edmark, Hardy, like all of them for sure, because they're like guiding us through this journey.
Absolutely.
But to name people that I think we don't know personally, I think have been very influential because I hear from them almost every day, right? And it's like the Alex Hormozy, the Layla Hormozy, Cody Sanchez, Graham, all these people. We listen to more podcasts now, you know?
Yeah.
And we reflected how, you know, we read every day, but I think ingesting podcasts and just like different channels have been huge mentorships, both kind of like in direction and validation.
Yeah.
Because I think one of my favorite Cody Sanchez videos we just watched 2 days ago, where it's like 20 minutes of like 1 minute tips about work, productivity. I'm like, wow, these are all things we were doing, and like, are we on the right path? So I think YouTube University has really been influential, ironically.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I didn't grow up with YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned most of my knowledge in the past 2 to 3 years from YouTube now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think we've talked about this before, but like I think books are good for like kind of your foundational knowledge, and podcasts kind of add to that knowledge in a way that is more timely and relevant to maybe our situation. Like, you know, I have been talking to you numerous times about the few Lex Friedman podcasts that I've listened to, but those have been really transformative to me. And even last night when I was listening to a podcast, which I was not expecting to listen to, with Andrew Tate and George Jaco, right? And that was really surprisingly enlightening for me in a way that I wasn't prepared for. And it was, you know, a lot of the things that they were talking about I read in books, so I had that foundational knowledge, but like they brought it into a new frame of relevancy into, you know, our day and age kind of, that I thought was really eye-opening.
This is one of many things I love about you is like your openness, like how many girlfriends listen to Andrew Tate?
Probably not that many.
We've had this conversation before where, not specific to Andrew, but I guess it is. So Andrew's like very confrontational.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes the message gets lost.
Yes.
But even more so, what I'm really picking at is like him with mainstream media interviews.
Yes.
And we're like, are they even listening to him?
Yeah.
And I've never heard of George Janko until this interview.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because, you know, I feel like George did a great job of meeting, if not regulating, or what do you call it? Facilitating the interview with Andrew. It's like they're both intellectuals, they're both very analytical, they listen to each other, and yet they still challenge each other.
Yeah.
It was actually really, really mind-blowing. So yeah, I really liked it. And speaking of the Lex Friedman podcast, I also really enjoyed the Jeff Bezos interview too.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Whenever we listen to like Jeff or like Bill Gates or especially Elon, I feel like you can't really fake that level of intelligence.
No,
right?
definitely
and
not.
The things they say, whether it's technical or like business related, it's like because they've gone through it, you know. And so I really admire people like that. I don't really quite understand when people like hate on the billionaires. I'm like, they probably did a lot of work to get there. Yeah. And they're probably, you know what they're talking about to have built all these companies. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I understand why they are. They're easy to target, you know, haters be the haters, you know what I mean? And I will say that, you know, there are fair arguments out there about like, should one person have this much money, really? But I think it's a balance of like, you know, having that open engagement to criticism, being able to listen to each other, being able to also understand like, you know, other people's circumstances. Like Jeff probably, he probably worked his ass off to get to that point. I don't think you get that rich by just sitting there and waiting for something to happen. And I don't think we've gotten to that point either in our lives at that stage. I don't know if we ever will, but it's definitely something to think about in terms of like, you know, how much human effort does it really take to get to that point? Yeah. And what do we need to do? What do we need to sacrifice to get there? So.
Well, I'm super excited about whatever sacrifice we need to take just because we can do it together.
Yes, that's a huge part of this business, I think, is built on the dynamic between the two of us being able to support each other.
Speaking of Jeff and Amazon, not to mention their names, but our latest client I think was super cool because they were talking how like they built, it's been 2 or 4 years?
4 years.
4 years. And they said they started in their garage. Yep. And I was like, let's go. Yeah. And that's another cool thing about this journey is meeting people along the way.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Especially the younger entrepreneurs. Shout out to Mercedes.
Yes.
But yeah, it's cool that like when we get clients who are younger and like they're really in the trenches with us. Yeah. It's like, let's all go, let's try to do it. And we all can appreciate the hardships of building a company, dealing with clients, figuring out sales, blah, 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 blah. So.
Yeah, I think that's what's been really powerful even about this place that we're in right now and the boys. I mean, I don't think we would be here today if it weren't for them. We wouldn't probably be having this podcast, talking about this business, and I think having them around really helps keep that fire like blazing in us.
I'm excited because we'll hopefully do one of these with each of them before we leave. But I think we were telling them last night where I think the first time they kind of inspired us to do something was the trip. So we were in Vegas and they had their whiteboard in their house and I think we came in and I was like, oh, what's going on there? And there were countries like Japan and Italy and they're like, oh, we're going to travel the world next year. And I remember just like looking at you and thinking, we need to do this too.
Yes.
So we did that. And then we had a similar episode last year in Tucson when we visited them. They had their whiteboard and we spent like an hour or two just masterminding. We didn't have a business at the time. And on the trip back, I was like, we need to do this too. Yeah. Because hearing the boys like read a book one book every week, building up their like entrepreneur set, like building up skills. I'm like, if we don't start now, they're gonna leave us behind. Yeah, we're gonna get lost in the dust, definitely. I mean, they're the ones that I feel like really push us to keep going and to keep adapting. Something that they actually do, just like you said, is they read a book a week. I know, it's crazy. Which is nuts. But I mean, that we've kind of been trying to keep up in our own way. And you read a lot more than I did last year. What was like some of the favorite reading of 2023? What was something that really, was there anything that stuck out to you? Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to Alex. It's just the level of intelligence, I think, with Alex Ramosi is, I don't know, quite unmatched from what I've seen so far. But yeah, so I go $100 million offers and $100 million leads. Yeah. I'm trying to think of, I think also Chris got us on like reading about billionaires. So I'm in the middle of reading Richard Branson's Losing My Virginity. It's kind of really long, but really interesting. Yeah. I don't know, how about you? Have any books that you liked last year? I don't think I can talk about last year because I honestly don't feel that I read enough and I don't think there's anything that really stuck out to me. And I might be biased because I'm currently reading it now and I keep freaking referencing it, but I think it's been a very mind-shifting book. Was that Courage to be Disliked book? I'd have to like look at who the author is, but that has been, I haven't been to therapy in a little while, and I think it's a form of therapy that I find very enlightening because something that they talk about in that George and Andrew podcast was about depression and how like you go to a therapist for 2 to 3 times a week and you talk about how sad you are like every single time for multiple hours. And don't get me wrong, I think therapy can be a tool to improve people's lives, but I do agree in a sense that like the thing you focus your mind on is the thing that you'll really feel. And I think what this book does really well is that it doesn't necessarily focus on all the faults of man or all the faults of an individual, but thinks about the individual in the scope of society, in the scope of all the tools that we have to our use, and how to accurately manipulate those things to your benefit so that you can be a better person, so you can be more grounded, so you can have better relationships and have a higher, sense of self. So that has always been something I resonate with, and then this is just kind of a way they put it down in writing. Reinforced it. Yeah, absolutely. So. Is that the same concept? I think when we had this conversation, I was bringing up both from Alex and Layla, where they kind of don't like the idea of like labels. Yes. So it's like you could like they don't like oh I'm depressed or like oh I'm smart or whatever characteristics you want to label yourself as. They don't really believe in that, which makes a lot of sense. Yes. It's like well what really matters is like what you want to be and how you're going to take action to be there, right? Absolutely. Otherwise, it's like the labels are defining you versus you defining your label. Yes. So if you're like, well, I hate to speak about depression because I've never been depressed, but like if you say you're depressed, then you'll just reinforce that idea versus like, well, what do I need to do to get out of this state? Yes, right? Totally. I mean, the thing that like absolutely blew my mind last night was George had this
thing where he was like, there are two wolves. One is chained up in the light and one is chained up in the dark. And he asked Andrew, which one will live? And Andrew, like, I thought the exact same thing. I was like, oh, it's the one in the light. And he said, no, it's the one you feed.
Exactly.
And I was like, holy crap.
Exactly.
Like,
that's awesome.
that's profound that's super profound. So.
I love that we're talking about this podcast. I think one more thing that we can spin off on is the idea of like faith.
Yes.
Because growing up, I grew up, I guess, Roman Catholic, but I never really internalized what I was learning, even at all. Then I got into physics, and I'm like, well, you know, like, I don't believe in like a God or something.
Yeah.
And then just recently, when I listen to people like George or Andrew or like Patrick, I feel like a lot of people that have achieved a level of success, they kind of attribute it to like God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, maybe there is something there. But at the very least, you know, I don't like to subscribe to something because I hear it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think on the reading list, I think in the next year or two, well, we'll see, because I don't know this is how
it's a pretty
I think I do actually want to like maybe try to study one religious book, whether it's like the Bible or the Quran, just to like read and actually see what's going on. Yeah. Because again, I kind of read it growing up, but I never really internalized it. Yeah. That, and also I think these people that I follow reference a lot meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So I'm excited to try to read that one as well, but you know, we'll see how that goes.
I think that would be, you know, a great like intro into getting into some more of these like religious texts, because these adaptations of like old world thought, I don't even want to say old world, but like ancient thought in a way, is kind of a bridge into like getting into religion, because if you think about it, these kind of things were happening around the same time. The way they spoke, the way they thought, the society, the culture. And something that, you know, really stood out to me in this book again is they talk about like discourse is the way that you find truth.
What do you mean by discourse?
Discussion is a better word for that. So like the example they use is like Socrates actually never wrote down any of his discussions that he had with people. And most of the time he would go to like young people, to all different kinds of people, and have really heated like discussions about things. And then it was his disciple Plato that was the one that wrote all of this down. And that's how we have like the ideas and learnings of Socrates. And to kind of tie this back to meditations and to tie it again back to faith is like, we are starting at the ground level right now with having this discussion. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it gravitates into written, maybe through meditations, and then forth into faith. Because I don't know, I'm kind of in a similar situation, I think, as you, which is interesting that two of us were able to gravitate towards each other, where it's like, my dad was raised Catholic, my mom was raised like Buddhist, you know, a certain denomination of that. And so for me, it's been like, you know, a challenge in a way, like to find this path towards God or spirituality. Like, it hasn't always been as set, I think, as, you know, certain people. They grow up with it, they have it all the time. So I'm very curious to see how this progression will go and formalize, I guess.
And again, I like that we can do it together.
Right?
Because like, we don't necessarily have strong beliefs in anything at the moment, which is great. We're open mind and we can converse with each other. Yeah. We haven't really had like arguments yet. I think one thing that comes to mind was that time we talked about Scientology.
Yes.
I was basically just bringing up like, hey, I don't know anything about Scientology, but I want to hear more about it. And like, but anyway, Scientology, Catholic, whatever, any religion. I just want to like understand more where people are coming from, because I never did that growing up.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And to kind of touch on 2 points there, I think something that you've really helped me with is opening my mind to things that, you know, I would have just a surface level understanding of and maybe not like be fully researched up on. And, you know, just hearing what other people say, having that visceral reaction. I mean, we can bring it back to Andrew Tate. I'm not going to lie. The first time you told me that you were listening to Andrew Tate, I was like, why? Like, why would you do that? Exactly. But now that I have actually gone and listened to him, I'm like, oh no, he makes a lot of sense. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think I'm in a more informed place to make that assessment.
I think that's one of my pet peeves with people in general, where they like, it's another form of don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Not just Andrew, but anyone. Like, say, I feel like there's very little people that I don't try to listen to, even though I don't like them personally, or I don't like their tone or the way they communicate. But I'll always listen to the intent of what they're saying, and then judge afterwards.
Yeah.
But going back to meditations and like documentation and this faith thing, I think this is why even better that we journal every day. Well, I journal every day, you journal occasionally, but we document our journey. So like this YouTube channel, I think it's gonna be super cool, kind of looking back 5-10 years from now to see kind of how we think and how we've developed our thoughts.
Yes, definitely. Because I think both of us, we have lived our lives up to this point somewhat informally, I would say. Like, I mean, you're better at documentation than I am. Like, you are documenting your sick days, your poker winnings. But it'll be interesting to hear you document your thoughts, your internal reflections. And I mean, that's what makes meditations, I think, so interesting, was because it wasn't made for everyone else. It was just Marcus Aurelius writing down like the things he was struggling with. Right. So I don't know. You could be the next meditations is what I'm saying.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. But I think that's one of the big things that makes me gravitate towards meditations. And I haven't read it yet. Yeah. But the way it was phrased like that, they were like, hey, actually, it's actually just his journal. Yeah. And because I've been journaling for almost 800 days straight, I'm like, and this guy is, super powerful leader in the past, a lot of experience. So I think that's what fascinates me. But we'll see. I think, if not the Elon book, it'd be that one, the next one. So.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up this idea of internal reflection and reading meditations and eventually reading a form of faith book. Right. I think that's something that I've also wanted to do for a little while. I just don't think I've ever vocalized it because it's, I feel like sometimes there is like a pressure or a bias that people have around like positive or negative about religion and about like deepening oneself into a religion. And I feel like for me, like I've always had spirituality and I feel like I've always believed kind of like in God, but I've just never had the environment to kind of explore that in a way that wasn't like judged. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think words like therapy or religion or faith, I think most people like have this certain connotation towards those words, and that's why I don't like using those. So anyway, I try to describe a concept versus a label. Yeah. So anyway,
I think that's a really great way of saying that.
This is deep, but
I know.
back to our entrepreneurship journey.
We're going into it.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, going into this journey. Okay, so we've been doing this for like 8-10 months or something. Yeah. Has there been any big surprises for you as we've gone along through this entrepreneur
journey? Yeah, that's a good question. I think, again, the thing that surprised me the most is how quickly we've been moving relative to my expectation at the start. I mean, we've been in this for like 9 months or something. And I feel like the level of growth that we've had just as individuals and together and as a company have been far beyond what I could have ever expected. I was very surprised with, my own ability to be able to manage people in a way and to consider myself as like a leader. And then of course, just financial growth within the company. I wasn't expecting to hit, the goal so quickly, under a year. Yeah.
I think a huge part of that is like our discipline. Yeah. And like constantly pushing ourselves. Like I keep bringing this up, but the 1% every day really gets to me. Yeah. Like even if I try to read like 15 minutes a day, but even if I just get like 5 minutes in, over time that's going to add up, right? And our skills and experience just compounds. Yes. Right? When we started, we were working like 2 to 3 hours a day. Yeah. And now we're kind of getting to like 6 or 7. Yeah. And I think if you just imagine doing what we do every day at that level, like it's almost impossible to not achieve what we're trying to achieve. And I think if we just keep that discipline, it'll get better. And I joke, but I do believe one day we're going to be working 12-hour days. Yeah, I do too. Be able to go by like nothing.
Yeah, so. I agree. I think too, what's been interesting to me and something that you talk about a lot is enjoying the journey. Yeah. And, we're going to be we've scaled up our working hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think I was a little scared of that at first, and now I find more enjoyment in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really do feel like I'm enjoying the journey. I'm enjoying being able to share this with you, with Chris and Paulo. I think it's deepened our bond because of that.
Yeah, I think the part that's hard, which is what discipline helps with, is getting periodic reward.
Yeah.
So if it's all just you lose clients, you lose money, blah 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 blah, that sucks. But right, if we like get a client every day, we're like more motivated, or like we get something positive.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think something that we need to continue to look for or carve around is to find ways that continuously motivates us to push forward.
Something I'd like to ask on that note, just to kind of challenge that idea a little bit, is, I think right now, if we were making like, oh my gosh, we just made $1 million. Oh my gosh, we just made another $1 million. It would feel amazing because it's new to us.
Right.
What are your thoughts on like, folks that are really successful? Jeff Bezos is making $1 million every day, but I'm sure it's like, it doesn't mean as much to him. So I know it's hard to predict how you will feel in the future, but like when we get to that point when we're making a lot of money, what do you think will be kind of your driving force after that?
Yeah. I think, again, I keep going back to Alex and Layla, but Alex and Layla are set.
Yeah.
But why do they work as hard? Or even Elon, right? Like Elon's probably still working more than anyone in the world, and he's already the richest person. And I think it comes from two places. One is the drive to they have like this vision that what they want to achieve, and they're not going to stop till they do that. But I think also once you get into this rhythm of this work ethic, it's almost hard to not do that anymore. Yeah. So like if you're working every day and you just love working, and I think this is a problem with like maybe when people retire too, it's like they become bored. Yeah. So I think to answer your question, because we are building up this level of discipline, I think the discipline is what's going to keep us moving forward indefinitely. Yeah. So that's my thought. That's a great answer. How about you? What's going to keep you moving forward?
Oh man, I honestly I don't really know all the time. I think once we get to that point, my discipline will be at a different level. So I think I will be able to be motivated by that discipline more so than I am today. I think what also keeps me going is the idea of, like Layla talks about a lot, like the more money that you have, honestly, the more impact that you can make. Exactly. And that for me, I very much care about that because you know me, like I care deeply about other people. For sure. Whether it be my family, our friends, other business owners. And I think what's going to be a big motivator for me is being able to achieve that level of impact for other folks. We haven't experienced that yet, but ideally, we'll get to a point where we can actually share our rewards with our friends and family. Yeah. And I think that'll be another level of like high. Yes. It's like buy your dad or mom a car or a house, or like take them on trips or bring friends along. Like, I think that will be very motivating for us for a period of time. And I think that will like plateau and like, okay, same thing every day. And then I think the next level of that is like philanthropy with like bigger things. Absolutely. So yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I think I'm really excited for both of our futures. We'll see how this turns out in the next 12 months. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I hope we can make this, recurring. Yeah. And use it kind of as like a little time capsule. Yeah. This was awesome. I know. Me too. Kind of like disappeared. In the beginning, we were like looking at the camera. I know, trying to be like all YouTube, but you know, that's good. That's something. Probably in the spirit of abruptness. Yeah. Cool. Proud of us. Well, we should just do our little sign off. Yep. We upload weekly, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. Ding. Peace. Peace. How did this week go? Oh man, this week was a struggle for us. Yeah. I think physically more so than a mental struggle. Yeah, for sure. But I think because of the physical struggle, our mental also struggled. Yes. So, I mean, you can talk about this week because I think it was a hard week for you. Yeah. So we're in Cape Town, and we left Vegas on Saturday morning, but the night before I basically couldn't sleep. I got like 2 hours of sleep, and
the journey is like 24 hours. So basically I was up for almost 48 hours effectively. And I think because of that, I got kind of sick,
Yeah.
which is weird because I don't think I'd gotten sick in like 2 years,
Yeah,
maybe.
literally.
Like no joke, like nothing. And it really made me appreciate the value of the sleep. And so there's kind of this negative feedback loop where because I was kind of sick, I couldn't sleep, and because I couldn't sleep, I got more sick.
Yeah.
And this is finally like Saturday here, like almost 7 days later. I think last night was the first time I actually got 6-7 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
I've been averaging like 2 or 3 hours, which is horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I will say like, again, the discipline we built up and like learning, like reading like Mama Mentality and Goggins, like even though there were times where I was like kind of complaining, but I feel like I would have taken it much worse like 2 or 3 years ago, like really beating down on myself.
Yeah.
So, but you kept the company running, so that was a cool thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
If anything, I think there was a silver lining of it was you were forced to kind of sit back and let me take the reins a little bit.
Great
and
job.
I think it was amazing for both of us to see that. One, for me to experience what you have effectively been doing for the last 8 months, and understand like how much effort that takes, how much work, how much consideration, insight. Like it truly gave me an insight into what you're doing, and I think also it empowered me to kind of like, okay, I can do this too. You know,
did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do it, I think, without your training though.
Thank you.
You've really been a good leader in the business and in this relationship to help me learn these things.
The training you didn't know you were going through.
Yeah, basically. Cool. So thank you for training me, and thank you for trusting me.
So today we're going to we'll wait for the boys to wake up, but we're gonna do our first exploring in Cape Town.
Yeah, I'm excited.
This week we're probably gonna do beach/penguins.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna do like the city sightseeing tour bus thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, good job.
All right,
So proud of you this week.
Cool. All right,
Love you.
sweet. I love you too.